Hello, everyone. Welcome. My name is Claire Longo, and welcome to my channel. Today, we're going to talk about how to create that rock star resume. So I've seen a lot of resumes come across my desk, and I've hired a few people, and I've also been job searching many times myself through different phases in my career. And I've learned a lot about how to structure a resume, what makes a resume stand out, and how to really make your resume move to that top of the stack to increase your chances of landing your dream job. So what I was going to do today, what I was thinking would be a good way to kind of deliver the tips and tricks would be to go through my own resume. I've downloaded copies of my resume through different phases in my career. So we have like entry level, mid-level, as well as senior and management. And I'll just put the resume up and we'll kind of talk through why I structured things the way that I did and the tips and tricks that I recommend. I also host a podcast called Conversations with My Friends in AI. And this is a great way to get a glimpse into the mindset and the technical expertise of the people building AI today and learn from them. So if you want to check it out, I'll link it down below. So let's pull up an example of my resume here and we'll talk through some formatting and general tips. And the first thing I want you all to notice is this is not 1 page long. I think that it's a bit of a myth that your resume should be 1 page. I think people recommend to keep it to 1 page just so it's easy for people to quickly read and pull out the relevant information. But I disagree with that. If you have more than 1 page worth of relevant experience and it takes more than 1 page to make that clear and get it all onto the resume, definitely go more than 1 page. I think instead of trying to condense it into 1 page, it's better to actually just have some really good formatting and colors that make the key information easy to read and pop out quickly. So instead of doing that 1 page trick, you're actually doing a trick with formatting to make it look even more professional and still just as easy to read. So the things that should be on the first page of your resume are going to be that professional summary, your contact details, links to your portfolio, your education section, and that's really it. That's like the most important thing to get on that front page because those are the core things that people are going to be scanning for very quickly. Then as you start rolling into the other pages, you can start listing out your employment history. Typically, it's good if this starts on the first page too, but you can roll that on for as many pages as you need. And then you should also start listing out like personal projects, publications, patents, anything you have like that. I created this resume with a online tool called Resume.io. It helps you with formatting. It actually has like a really cool AI tool as well that will help you with creating the resume. So I'll definitely link that all below if you all want to get started with some excellent formatting. There's a ton of templates there that will help you get started. So the second tip I have is this professional summary. It appears as the profile here in this resume. This is just a short blurb that summarizes the resume. This is TLDR. This is what I want the hiring manager or the recruiter to get from reading my resume. I want them to understand what I'm looking for, what that perfect role would be for me, and why I stand out for this, what kind of unique skill sets that I would bring to their company. This should not be long. I think direct is better than verbose. I try to condense it, make it as short as possible because hiring managers, recruiters, they're seeing a lot of resumes right now and they don't have time to really like read a novel about your entire career path. It's much better to keep this direct and concise and to the point, but really highlight the most important things here. So here I highlight kind of like what I want my roles and responsibilities to be in my current role. And then I also talk about the experience that I have, how that makes me unique, and how I can bring value to their company. So another thing that you want to include on your resume is your contact details. I don't think anyone needs your home address. I think that's a little bit too much personal information. I've seen people put this on your resumes. I don't think it's relevant. I think what you should have here is your email address. You can have your phone number if you want recruiters to reach out to you directly over phone. And most importantly, you should have a link to your LinkedIn. And I think it's very important to maintain your LinkedIn, keep it up to date, invest in networking there. And if you have a personal website, and I'll get into why I think that's really important for AI, you should definitely link this in the contact details as well. So then there's the education section. If you have a degree from university, bachelor's, master's, PhD, that should be on the first page of your resume. It should be in its own unique section so that it can be identified very quickly. I don't want people to get through the 3 or 4 pages of your resume to find out at the end that you have a PhD. If you've got some kind of degree like that of any level, definitely highlight that on the first page and make it stand out in formatting ways. The way to make it stand out in terms of formatting would be create your own section, its own section for it. If you don't have a degree, don't worry about it. That is not required for these kinds of engineering, data science roles. It definitely could help. So if you have it, just make sure that it's highlighted. Notice that what I include in my education section is the university I attended, the degrees, whether it's a master's, a bachelor's of arts, bachelor's of science, and also the topic of study. If you have some online certifications or you attended maybe like a data science boot camp or immersion course, you could also put this in the same section, or if you don't have a degree and did those kinds of study programs instead, that would be the content to put here in the education section. So here's how you really make your resume rise to the top of the stack. You need to build a portfolio. And in AI, a portfolio is going to include things like your own personal GitHub, where you're hosting code that you've written yourself. You could have a blog or a website. Maybe you're doing so why do we build a portfolio? Well, it's to showcase our skills, especially if we're more entry level and we haven't had that opportunity to maybe like do a data science or machine learning project hands on at a real company yet. If we have personal projects, we want to get that front and center. And if we are applying for like a software engineering, machine learning engineering, any kind of role that is going to require you to code, it's an excellent idea to already have a sample of your code out there in the wild for people to see. Within the interview process, they'll probably do some coding exams as well, but why not just give them a sample of your code ahead of time by referring them to your GitHub? All right, so another thing you want to do is highlight your skills. And we want to get into some good detail here. The skills section should highlight soft skills such as leadership, project management, those kinds of things. It should highlight coding languages such as Python or R or SQL. And it should also highlight any machine learning and data science or AI concepts that you know. In the experience sections, I think this is where it gets to formatting. It's very important to kind of show that chronological order of the experience. So I kind of like that the date in this format is separate a little bit to the left of the resume, and you also see the role and the company. So I want to see what your title was, I want to see what company you were at, and I want to see when you were there, and I want to be able to pick that up very quickly. You should have a short blurb that highlights the key roles and responsibilities that you had and any tools that you use, tools or machine learning approaches. So for example, if I used Python to train an XGBoost model, I want to note what kind of model it was. That's the modeling approach. And I also want to note that I used Python. These are things that I see people like actually make a lot of mistakes with. They'll be like, oh, I created a machine learning model that does XYZ. But then I'm left as a hiring manager wondering like what machine learning model approach did they use? Like, do they know neural networks? Is this a proven example of them using a random forest? I want to see proof of a actual machine learning modeling approach that they've applied. All right, so another tip for writing out your job descriptions. There's something that I like to call AI ROI. It's the measure of the business value that your data science or machine learning project brought to the company. So if you created a machine learning model at your past job, what you want to make sure to do is have some kind of metric that quantifies the value and success of that project. And I'll throw up a couple like great examples that I've seen here. This is such a great way to just highlight the value that you can bring as a data scientist. And it also proves that you have the right mindset as a data scientist. One mistake that I see data scientists making is they'll be overly indexed on the approach or the technical depth of what they're doing, that they forget to tie it back to the actual value that they're bringing to the business. And in that case, it kind of starts to like throw off red flags with a hiring manager, because the concern might be that this person maybe did not tie that deep modeling approach or complex idea to the business, or possibly their project failed and they didn't bring any value. So if you do have value to show and you're able to quantify that, get your AI ROI on your resume. It will make your resume pop immediately. All right, so in the field of AI, if you have any kind of publications, any kind of patent application, definitely list those out, as it just kind of shows that great innovative mindset. So it's definitely a section that you want to include on your resume if you have it. Great, so those are the general tips for formatting your resume. Now let's kind of walk through the different phases of my career, and I'll throw up an example of my resume here through different phases: early career, mid-career, and senior. And I'm going to give some advice for kind of creating a resume during those different phases. So early career, this is when maybe you're starting to break into the field of AI. Maybe you're looking to get your first role as a data scientist or machine learning engineer. At this point, you have quite a challenge. Many job descriptions are asking for 1 to 2 to 3 years of experience, which you don't have. So it's really hard to kind of get into that first role. But once you get it, your career is going to rocket ship. So don't give up. But you do have that challenge of just trying to showcase your skills and your talents, even being entry level without much experience or none. So here's a tip to do that. If you don't have actual work experience to list, or if you have work experience that's not quite relevant to AI, list the work experience that you do have, but make sure to also include an additional section on your personal projects. And this is where your portfolio comes in and becomes so crucial. You could have a website where you're hosting your own blog, or maybe you have links to your Medium articles. And then you also probably have some personal projects. If you follow my advice in creating personal projects, I can link that video down below if you're curious about how to create this portfolio that's so key to making your resume stand out entry level. I've got some excellent videos. I have a podcast episode with James Sanders, who's very senior in the AI kind of field, worked as a project manager, and he walks you through some of his personal projects and how he identified them, structured them, and ultimately got them out on the internet and part of his resume. So I'll link that down below. And I also have tips and tricks for scoping and executing your own personal project and making sure it's really relevant and makes a resume stand out. So I'll link that down below. So assuming you've kind of went through those, you've got a portfolio of personal projects. Now you have code to showcase, you have applications, data science to showcase. You probably even have relevant metrics to kind of make that AI ROI pop. So what you want to do is include an additional section in your resume on your personal projects. And if your personal projects are related to AI and your work experience is not, maybe this section even goes up before your work experience. But what you want to do here is it's the same tips as writing out the description of your work experience. In the description of your personal projects, you want to include AI ROI, the business impact or potential business impact of your project. You want to include what tools you used, what software and what coding languages, and you want to include what machine learning techniques you used as well. So here's an example of my resume kind of mid-career. At this point, I was working as an individual contributor data scientist. The last job that I worked at was Trunk Club, which was a personalized styling service owned by Nordstrom. So I was working on recommender systems for Trunk Club at the time. The tips and tricks for this level of your career is you can see that I do have my portfolio built up here. You can link out to my Kaggle projects. You can also see my GitHub. So that's going to give you examples of my code. And then I've also got within my work experience, I'm highlighting a lot of the technical tools that I'm using and trying to kind of showcase the technical depth. So we're talking about the exact modeling approaches, potential challenges in the project and how I overcame them technically. So scanning this, you can see like, okay, this person has worked with TF-IDF, they've worked with matrix factorization, recommender systems. So you see like almost a specialty start to pop up. It's not just like, oh, I did machine learning and I used Python. We're getting into a lot more specifics here. And I think at this point in your career, this is going to help you a lot because it's showing that you're starting to kind of specialize in some areas. And if you start applying to roles where that's relevant, it'll help a lot. So at this time in my career, I was applying to other data science and machine learning roles within retail. So I was hoping to continue to use these same kind of like best practices that I've learned by operationalizing and deploying these recommender systems. And so anyone who is hiring for a position like that, they'd be able to see that my experience here is quite relevant. So at this point, mid-career, I'm really starting to target what I'm looking for. Actually, let's pause a minute and talk about the job application strategy. Our application strategy for early career is batch and blast. I was applying to like hundreds of jobs, just hoping that some of them would call me back. And the callback rate was a really, really small percentage. Like if I have to guess, it was probably like maybe 5% I would get like a recruiter that sets me up with like the recruiting phone screen. And like if that goes well, I get to a hiring manager, which was maybe like, I don't know, a percentage of those. So it was really what my goal was to do is just show that I know core concepts and just get my resume in front of as many people as possible and see what bites. At this point in my career, mid-career, I started to focus on something. I started to get a little bit narrow, and it doesn't reduce your chances of getting a role. It actually increases it at this point, because at this point, although I might not be the perfect fit for like a computer vision data scientist or NLP, because that's just not where I've been spending my time. If you're trying to build recommender systems and apply that to, if you're trying to do like personalization algorithms, specifically like in the retail world, which is where a lot of money is really made with AI today, I'm kind of your gal for that. So I was able to really highlight that here in the resume. Now, mid-career, I had a much more targeted approach to job searching. I had become specialized. I chose a niche like this. And I had kind of learned best practices through trial and error and actually doing it. So I'd used some very relevant tools in this area. I had used some very relevant like machine learning approaches. And I'd also bumped into some pretty like gnarly challenges that these very specific kind of models have. So at this point, I spent more time really highlighting that very focused, specialized expertise in machine learning. And I really focused on adding a lot of details about my most relevant work experience. Jobs I was applying for at this point was like recommender systems, personalization algorithms in retail, hoping to really get into something like that and continue that personalization. So at the senior level, my job application strategy was no longer about applying to open job postings. It was much, much more about my network. At this point, I had a pretty mature LinkedIn profile and had some great connections through there. And I'd also met a lot of people just through my career that moved on to other companies. So I actually landed my current job just totally through networking. And at that point, it's like, I didn't even lead with my resume. Like you're talking to the people, they know you, they think you'd be a good fit. And they're like, oh, by the way, as a formality, you have to send me your resume. So I would send them this. So at this point, like the resume should not be what you're leading with, but it's also still super important to just have it clean, have it highlighting all the right things. But here you can see it's basically the same strategy as the mid-level, but I'm now focusing a lot more on what my team did versus what I did. So you'll see here that I'm measuring the impact of my team. I'm talking about what my team has delivered, how I've empowered my team to scale through process and stuff like that. So you still want to maintain that technical depth, but as you're moving into like management, you want to kind of highlight your team's accomplishments, how you help them get there. Currently within my career, my goal is to never have to interview or write another resume again in my life. At this point, I feel like I've got enough content out there in terms of building my portfolio and my website. And I've built a network that's large enough that people truly personally know me and they know the quality of my work and they know where I like to focus and where I could add value. My hope is that I will never have to apply for another job in my life. But to get to that point, it's a combination of building your network and just really have an amazing winning resume to get your foot into the door in the right places. All right, well, that's everything I had. I hope these tips and tricks help you land your dream job. If you have a success story, drop it down below. I'd love to hear it. And if you want to learn a little bit more about building your resume out, definitely check out Resume.io, which I'll link down below, which helps me with this formatting that I mentioned. And you can also jump over to my website where I have some additional tips.